Hi guys, how are you today? I hope you guys are good. I'm just here reporting on the GOAT debate and the Grand Slam race. First, let's talk about Roger Federer and what he did in his first match. This video is not about Federer or his first match. Just a quick, we'll dive into that just for 30 seconds. I felt like Federer's first match, best possible start for Roger. And I just felt like, being his age at almost 40 and being out for 14 months for the very first match, maybe not the first tournament, best possible start. So it shows all the indications that he could actually play he could be the same Roger he's always been. Of course, not the 25-year-old version. Like, let's just say if he kept playing, didn't have an injury, the natural decline of age, where he would have been if he was never out at this age, coming up to 40, 39, 40, he's going to get back to that level. So Federer, I would say, he's anyone who thinks he won't be the same player, I think that's going to be wrong. I think he will be the same player, but of course he's 39 now. So even if he had never had an injury, he would have declined at this age. He's going to be on that level, but it's not going to be where this injury has affected his career, where he won't be able to get back to where he was. I believe he will get back to where he was before the injury. And if he's slightly at a lower level, it's just because he's a year older and he would have went there anyway. So guys, now let's get into what this video is all about, the GOAT debate. Firstly, I want to talk about like some things have happened. Djokovic has won the Australian Open, so I'm going to say how that's affected things, and I'm also going to get into the weeks at number one, which I'll do first. So, firstly, how relevant is this weeks at number one? Whether it be Djokovic having it, Federer's had it before. Well, my answer to this is year-end number one are much more important. How many year-end number one a player has had, that's much more important. But I would say weeks at number one, maybe it's got some importance, but very little, I would say. Now, the reason being, right, let's just say Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, or any group of players are playing well at one time. Like Nadal might win the French Open, Djokovic the Australian Open, Federer Wimbledon. There are different winners and the points are going to be changing, right? At the end of the year, we're going to have 11 months of results to put into the rankings, right? So then we're going to get to see who is the best player for that year. It's not going to be about how many points are you defending, how you did last year, all this kind of fluctuation. It's just going to be like all the points from the previous year are gone. Your current ranking stand of what you've done over the 11 months of the year, now that it's over. So that's what it's about. And I see that as very important. Now, if you take out the previous 2020 year, because I don't think we should include that as a year in number one, not just because most of the year was wiped out, because it was a situation where what we have in 2020 is a different ranking system where all your results from 2019 you get to keep unless you better them. So it's basically who gets to play in a tournament where they didn't do so well last year and there's a chance to grow. That's all it's about. So if you won, for example, every tournament you played the previous year, which no one did, you get to keep all of that. So as far as weeks at number one, they'll just repeat from 2019 to 2020. Your results won't be relevant. And you can't do worse than you did last year. So if you've got an amazing year, you're going to keep that. If you had a bad year, then you'll have a chance to grow. But what I'm trying to say is if you did really well in 2019, you'll just keep those points and then you'll get all those weeks you got in 2019 for the great year, you'll get them in 2020, which is not really any bearing of what you did. So you get to double up being number one for 2 years because of what you did in 1 year. When any other year, if you do well in one year, you get credit that year, but if you don't the next year, you lose the points. Whereas under this system, whatever you did the previous year, you get to keep. So then you get credit. So your weeks at number one will double up into 2020, and then your year-end number one will, if you were the best player in 2019, you dominated, you get to keep those points and then pop in 2020. And then there are other things that play, like, for example, at the French Open, Djokovic had a chance to grow his points. At the US Open, he had a chance to grow his points when they came back. Nadal won both, so he didn't. And I'm not just talking about Djokovic and Nadal, but my point of view is not just coming down to what you did in 2020. It's also coming down to what you did in 2019. And if you're the best player in 2019, then you could lose in the first round in all the tournaments you won, and you've got the credit as though you've won it. So I don't think just repeating the points for the second year in a row, you deserve the credit for being the number one both years. If you're the best in 2019, you deserve that credit for that year, but you should have to do it in 2020. But under this system, you get the credit for being number one for weeks and possibly the whole year, just solely based on what you did the previous year. Nothing to do. So it's not measuring what you did in 2020. It's measuring more what you did in 2019. And it's things like luck. Do you get to play in tournaments that you didn't do that well last year, so you have a chance to grow? Or are they all the same tournaments you won? Then you've got no chance to grow. So, like I said, with different players, Nadal was coming back to the French and US Open. So he didn't have a chance to grow. He did not have a chance to grow. So that's what I'm trying to say. But Djokovic did. But if Wimbledon was played, for example, then Djokovic couldn't grow and then Nadal could. So it's also dependent on which tournaments are going to be played, which are scheduled. Some are cancelled, some are not. So I personally do not think that the weeks at number one should be no, the year in number one shouldn't be counted last year. So then we have Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. If you take off 2020, because different ranking system, depending on which tournaments are played, it's all about sort of luck and chance and coincidence, not just normally what did you do for 11 months. Take off that year, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic have, I think, 6 year-end number ones. Maybe I've got it wrong, but they've got the same, or it could be 5. And then Sampras has 1 more year at number one than them. So that's an important statistic. Not the most important. I think winning Grand Slams and Masters of 1,000 are more important, I would suggest. But I'm just saying, but weeks at number one, like I said, when all three are playing well, Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, is changing all the time. You're not getting a lot of weeks. But when you're playing well when the other two are not for some reason, then it's not going to change because you're the only one playing well and winning everything. So when is that happening? Well, before 2008, Djokovic and Nadal weren't really anything like what they were for their career. Federer was peaking, so he logged up a whole lot of weeks at number one. So that's basically what made him. That's what made Roger Federer got all those weeks at number one. Most of them are up until 2008. Djokovic, yes, he's been in that time where he's played well where others, and it's changed Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, right? So Djokovic got in 2015 and 16, both Federer and was sort of past his peak. Sorry about that. Yeah, Federer was past his peak. Nadal just had a terrible couple of years. Djokovic was actually on fire, so he got a chance to win and excel, and him the only one doing it, while Federer and Nadal has 2 bad years. So therefore, he's not just getting 2 year-end, he's number one the whole time. So then he gets to build up all the weeks at number one, like Federer did before 2008. Whereas Nadal, for example, he's played through Federer's peak early in his career when he was in his early 20s, had to battle, couldn't be number one because he was only 20. Federer was 25. Then Djokovic's peak 2011, 15, 16. He had to go up against that. So then, even if he's best, he's not going to log a whole lot of number weeks at number one because it's always at least Federer or Djokovic, and a lot of the time both. So he doesn't have that opportunity. Secondly, if it's kind of an even race and then you're injured a bit more and you're winning the same amount, well, that fine line of sort of two guys clocking up an even amount of ranking points, the guy that's injured is going to lose and get less weeks at number one. So that's not really about the play. It's more about Nadal's health. You could give other players credit for maybe them not being injured and all of that. So that's what I'm saying about weeks at number one. I don't really value it. And then if you look at weeks at the top two, Nadal has the most in the history because he was all the way up early when he was at 19 pushing Federer. This time late in their careers, he's pushing Djokovic. So he's been able to consistently, like I said, in that fight where Nadal and Djokovic at their peak and the number one and two is changing. Nadal get lots of weeks at number two and at one. So that's what's happened there. And then same with Federer, sort of early when Federer was peaking. So getting a lot of weeks at number two, a lot of weeks at number one, but because he's going between them and fighting them at their best, the total weeks at number one aren't going to be the most. And then another thing, if you look at the weeks at number one, Federer is two, Djokovic now takes over at one, but Nadal six. But if you look at the big tournaments like Grand Slams one, Federer's at 20, Nadal's at 20, Djokovic is at 18. Like, I mean, it just doesn't make sense, right? So why would he be tied for the most? Why did he beat Federer on the head-to-head? Why is he almost tied with Djokovic? Then at Masters 1000, Djokovic has one more than him. He's second. It's going back and forth again. Djokovic and Nadal are almost tied there. So why would he be tied for the most Grand Slams in just one Masters 1000, away from being tied in Masters 1000, but not even be in the top five? It's because of what I said. He's played it while the others were playing good. So he got a lot of weeks at number one, the sixth most ever, but he got a lot of weeks at number two, whereas Federer got to have a period playing well while no one else was, Djokovic. So you're not having that change. And then also, again, Nadal's losing weeks at number one due to the injuries too. So I just don't see that year in number one. It's got some importance, not the most. Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic are all equal when it comes to that one. So moving on, what I would like to say is, okay, Djokovic won the Australian Open. I feel like he's not been at his best for a while. 2015, 16 through to 2011, he was great. 2000, Wimbledon 2018, US Open 2018, Australian Open 2019. I just felt like Djokovic was at a really high level and got it back. But since then, he barely survived at Wimbledon 2019. Federer, 6 years old, had a chance to serve it out. Federer won more points in that match, and Djokovic just survived. 40-15, a guy serving against you on grass. Firstly, it's hard to break on grass if you're the returner, so the chances are low. But when the server's got 40-15, all it takes is one ace, and you don't control that. So he was at Federer's mercy. He had to rely on Federer to mess it up. The Australian Open 2020, Thiem was up 2-1. He was tired. He was exhausted. He had all these problems. He needed to rely that Thiem had a mental breakdown. He hits all these balls out and deep, and he can't handle the pressure. Yeah, Djokovic is winning, but he's relying on guys to mess up, whereas before, he didn't need that. He was dominant. He could beat almost anyone, unless it's the French Open against Nadal and other times when Nadal did well on the other surfaces. But I'm saying he didn't. He wouldn't just play average and rely on guys. This Australian Open, he played average. These guys get hot and cold, and Tsitsipas and all this type of thing. They're hot and cold. Like Tsitsipas got hot against Nadal, cold against Medvedev. Medvedev was hot most of the tournament, cold in the final. They're all hot and cold. But then you see the biggest competitors that Djokovic has was not Raonic in the third round I mean, Fritz in the third round, Rainic in the fourth round. That Karatsanov or whoever he is in the semi-finals, who wasn't in the top 100, it was Zverev and Medvedev. They both just collapsed. I mean, Zverev was up 3-love, I think, the third and fourth set and just collapsed and gave it away. Medvedev played one of his worst matches in the final. And you see with Zverev and Medvedev being Djokovic's toughest test, in the Australian Open, they go to Rotterdam and lose in the first round, both of them. So what's that saying? You won a Grand Slam. Your hardest two competitors to win it went to a 500 about 10 days later and went out in the first round. That's a measure of how bad they were. And Djokovic could play average, possibly because he said he's injured. So maybe he wasn't his whole dominant self because of the injury. But nevertheless, wherever he was average, whether it's his game or the injury, probably the injury, but he's winning because other guys are bad. That's the point. He's not his old dominant self. He's not what he used to be at the Australian Open. He's also not what Nadal is now at the French Open. When Nadal dominated Roland Garros, he didn't lose a set. And you saw Djokovic playing this average level at the French Open, getting through to the final, not really looking great, but no one else is good, so he continues to win. But then when he plays that high-level opponent of Nadal in the French Open, he's not even close. So on one hand, you can look like, yeah, well, he's still winning, isn't he? He's playing well. But on the other hand, then you're shocked, like, how is this guy that you thought was good can't even make it a competition? It's because he wasn't good. He just needed to play against a good player to see how off he was. But then this time, he got to get through 7 wins at an average level rather than 6 because there was no one producing that level of Nadal at the French Open. So he got to say, I'm not taking advantage of 6, it's 7. So he wins that. He's at 18 Grand Slams. It's just that's the way it is. So I now want to talk about the so what we need to do is we need to look at the tennis surfaces, and then who is in a big advantage there, right? There are 3 Grand Slams on grass and hard courts, 1 on clay. Now, if you look at the court speed index, right, on a grass and a hard court, right, the court speed index is between 37 and 41. Almost every year, which is fast to change. It's been the US Open has been some years the fastest. Other years Australian Open, other years Wimbledon. They're so close because their court speed index is from 37 to 41, whereas the French Open is down at 19 to 21. So it's a massive difference. So basically, as far as speed, there's 2 types of speeds, right? That's why most grass court players also play well on the hard court. Do you get what I'm saying? So yeah, that's what I'm saying. But most clay courters only play well on clay and struggle on grass and hard courts, right? So that's the situation there. So basically, it's a huge advantage for Federer and Djokovic to get 3 of the 4 Grand Slams. They can just win on a surface they're comfortable. They never really have to win on grass or on clay. That's the big change that I just spoke of, because 3 of the 4 Grand Slams are on a surface, and they don't even need to say, I need to make the most of the court on the Grand Slams on a surface that suit me, because there's 3 of them. They don't. It's not like something rare. And then because they've got 3 of the 4, if they never win on clay, it's not a problem. Federer would have 19 slams if he never won at the French Open. Djokovic would have 17 if he never won. So they can just say, I'm only going to win where it's comfortable. That's why you look at Sampras, Djokovic, Federer, most of the best players in history of most Grand Slams and most accolades, they all prefer on a grass and a hard court. You don't see many clay courts because how are you going to just have one shot a year and then the rest of the time you're playing uncomfortable? You're going to have to do something exceptional. You're going to have to do something exceptional, which is something that Nadal has done. You're going to have to say, well, since I've got only one, I have to win it basically every year to have a chance, because there's only so much I'm going to win on a surface that's uncomfortable to me. Nadal won 13 French Opens. But even then, he needs to get to at least 20. He's at 20 now. Djokovic may catch that. So then he's needed to win 7 on a surface that's not comfortable to him. So people think that like Federer and Djokovic are more of an all-court player. But like I said, they're winning on surfaces that are basically the same, and they're called all-court players. But when they have to adapt to the French Open, they're just getting one slam on a surface that don't. When Nadal has to switch over, he's winning 7 on grass and hard courts. And to give you an idea, look, Djokovic's best slam is the Australian Open, followed by Wimbledon, which is grass, followed by US Open, which is hard court again. So it's like he doesn't even know if he's better on grass or hard courts. Overall, it's hard court, but why is he better at Wimbledon than the US Open? So that's just a fact. Like they've got 3 of their 4. So I say, in that case, they should take advantage of that. They should have more Grand Slams. But why is Federer at 5 years older only tied with Nadal at 20 slams? To me, that's crazy because it's a huge advantage to have 3 of the 4 slams on a surface that suits you. And why is Djokovic a year younger but still 2 Grand Slams behind Nadal? Where is the fact that he's had 3 of 4 slams on surfaces that suit his game? Where's that? Like, where's the advantage? I mean, for me, they would need to win at least more than 5 slams and Nadal to prove that they're the GOAT of tennis. But they haven't been able to do that. And like, for example, if you had 2 slams on clay, 2 on grass, and compared Federer to Nadal, it wouldn't be close. And that's fair. You're giving both players 2 slams on a surface that suits them, and we're seeing the best on all surfaces. Nadal would kill it. You had 2 on hard court, 2 on clay, Djokovic versus Nadal. Who would be winning? It would be clearly Nadal. Clearly. Like, let's just say we gave Djokovic his best 2 Grand Slams. Let's just say that, okay? We gave Djokovic his best 2 Grand Slams, Australian Open and Wimbledon. And let's just say Nadal lost the US Open, which is his best non-clay slam, and it was in Monte Carlo instead. So then Djokovic has got his best 2. Nadal's got 2 on clay. Nadal would be at 27 slams based on what they did in Monte Carlo and what they've done at Wimbledon, the Australian Open, the French Open. So we're erasing US Open results, replacing with Monte Carlo, where Nadal has 11 of them, Djokovic has 2. Then at French Open, it's 13-1. And then at Wimbledon, it's 5-2 in favour of Djokovic. The Australian Open, it's 9-1. But that all adds up to 27-17. With Federer, it would be even more ahead. So the fact is, it's only close because Federer and Djokovic have 3 of the 4 Grand Slams on their best surface, right? And Nadal is accused as a clay court player, but like I said, he's more of an all-court player. So if you call him a clay court player, let's see. We've got Djokovic and Federer who like grass on a hard court, right? When they're asked to move to clay, they get 1 Grand Slam. What does Nadal do? So even if he's got 3 chances a year to win on grass and hard, they got 1 on clay. So I'm going to be fair to that. But what I'm saying is, let's look at some Grand Slams that are played once a year, like the French Open. Nadal's supposedly a clay quarter. Why has he got 4 US Opens on a hard court if he's a clay quarter, right? And why, when you put Djokovic and Federer onto clay, why can't they get it 4 times? They've got it at once. It's nothing like 4 times. So if you compare Nadal, which is not clay, the US Open, he's 4 times better than they are on clay. If you compare even Wimbledon, you say, well, that's the worst. Most clay quarters hate grass. Even there, he's won 2. Calling someone good on 2 of the 3 surfaces a more all-court player when those 2 surfaces are very similar and clay is way different, and all clay players prefer to play on clay. Like I said, Sampras got none on clay but won a whole lot. Federer's got 1 on clay. Djokovic, that's the challenge. And for clay quarters, they never win on grass and a hard court. I've showed you the court speed index, right? So I've showed you that, right? So the thing of it is, right, like I said, you're taking Nadal off clay where he's not comfortable. He's got 4 US Opens. You take them off the grass and hard courts to clay, they've got 1 French Open. So it's clear outside of their comfortable surfaces, taking them both off it, taking Nadal off clay, 4 US Opens to 1 French Open. He does better than them there. Even when you take him to grass, 2 Wimbledons, right? To 1 French Open. And Nadal's probably closer to getting the third one because against Djokovic, when they closed the roof in the 5th set in the semi-finals, and the winner plays Anderson, Nadal was so close to a third Wimbledon. Then also 2011, he lost the final. If it wasn't for Federer being his best early in his career before Nadal had learned to play on the other surfaces, then he was a clay quarter. But 2006 and 7, Nadal can't win, and he's close. So I mean, all these chances that he's had, and then even to get another Australian Open, I mean, up 4-2 in 2012 on Djokovic, up 3-1 in 2017 against Federer. Never have lost a set against Stan before the 2014 Stan Wawrinka Australian Open getting an injury. I mean, that's just a whole lot of bad luck. It's not to do with the surface because he's got 5 slams on that surface hard court. He's won the US Open 4 times. Grass, he's not even as good as the hard court, but he's got 2 there. So if you look at about not 2 surfaces, saying I'm giving Federer and Djokovic credit for winning on all surfaces because they're winning on 2 which are about the same speed, right? If I'm going to say the free, Nadal has at least 2 slams on all of the free surfaces, if we're going to even call it free. But let's just call it free. He's got 2 on a grass court, 5 on a hard court, and 13 on clay, right? Whereas Federer and Djokovic can't say they've got 2 Grand Slams on the free surfaces. So they're getting credit for being all court players when they're not consistently across the free surfaces getting 2 slams on all 3 of them. When Nadal is 5 on hard court, 2 on grass, and all those on clay. So Nadal's clearly better at the US Open than Federer and Djokovic are at the French. He's even better than them at Wimbledon than they are at the French Open. So for me, they would have to be a long way. And I think it's embarrassing for Federer and Djokovic. Like, why is the Grand Slam race 18 to Djokovic and 20 for Federer and Nadal when they get 3 of the 4 slams on a surface that suit them and Nadal gets 1? For me, it's crazy that that's the reality. But he just wins everything on when you put him on his best surface and still wins a lot when he doesn't. There's no surface that he's only won 1. He's more consistent across the free because he can go and win it twice a Grand Slam on all of the free. They can't. They can only get 1 on clay. So for me, it's clear that Nadal is the best of all time, and it's clear if you made 2 on a clay and or grass and 2 on grass and hard, you would be 5-10 at least ahead. That's why I say Federer or Djokovic would need to be 5 Grand Slams ahead to then really, we'll talk about the GOAT debate. But even in this current format, it looks like Nadal will win the most. Like Federer and Nadal, he's 5 years younger. They're the same. Who's more likely to do it? Of course, Nadal. Then let's just end this with the Grand Slam race. The Grand Slam race between the 3 of them, right? Like, if you look at this Grand Slam race between the 3 of them, like, people have been saying Djokovic was going to catch up for years, and then he's just the best and all of this. Like, people saw Nadal's game as physical. They saw he's always injured. And then they thought when he gets to 30, he won't be able to do it again. Then when he played poorly in 2015-16, everyone said, that's it. Djokovic got, it's about can Djokovic catch Federer? Nadal's out of the conversation, right? This is all wrong now. It's proven to be wrong because Nadal has come back and won 2 Grand Slams in 2017, 1 in 18, 2 again in 19, and 1 in 20. And this is from the age of sort of 31 through to 34 when he won his last one, right? Also, another feeling is that he would just get injured and not win, and then Djokovic would just run over the top of him. That hasn't happened because at the end of 2016, Djokovic was 2 slams behind him. Now in 2021, 5 years later, he's still two behind. So that means, according to the trend, Djokovic hasn't gained any ground in the Grand Slam race on Nadal. On Federer, they've both gained ground, but against Nadal, he hasn't. So, but and in 5 years, he's 5 years older with less opportunities now. So if Djokovic, everyone would have said at 29, at 34, Djokovic would have passed Nadal, but he didn't. So all those people that were wrong then, why would you say he would catch him now? Why would you say Djokovic is going to do better between the ages of 34 and 39, his next 5 years, as opposed to 29 to 34? Everyone's better from 29 years old to 34 than from 34 to 39. And all these people that say he'll pass him now, they said that at the end of 2016. Of course, they were thinking that. Djokovic dominated for 2015-16. Nadal didn't. And Nadal looked like he was old and run down. So, of course, they thought it would happen by now. The fact is they were wrong. So why shouldn't they be wrong again when it's going to be even harder to catch up the next 5 years, because we're talking about mid to late 30s, not late 20s, early 30s. So for me, and if you look at it, he's really not catching up. 2017, since 2016, Nadal won 2 Grand Slams, Djokovic 0. 2018, Nadal won 1 Grand Slam, Djokovic won 2. Nadal was injured for 2 of them. But 2019, they won 2 Grand Slams each. 2020, they won 1 each. And then now Djokovic has the Australian Open, but Nadal's likely to get the French and make it 21-18. So the facts of the matter are he's not catching up, and they're both just aging. And they're both going tit for tat. Like, you get the Australian Open, I'll get the French. You get Wimbledon, I'll get the US Open. And they're both aging. The time is running out. And then Nadal's just running out this clock ahead of him. If you look at them on Masters of 1,000, well, they're about equal. So that's the Grand Slam race. He's not catching up. It's a fact. And all those people who just said, no, 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 he's catching, he's younger and all this type of thing, and Nadal's going to be injured. That's based on 2015 and 16, where Djokovic dominated and Nadal won nothing. But since 2017, I've showed you that he has not caught up, right? I've also showed you that he should be way ahead because he's got 3 of the 4 Grand Slams on a surface that suits him. Now on Masters of 1,000, if it's close between all of them, Federer is quite a bit back, but Djokovic and Nadal is one difference. Where before they resumed in 2020 from the virus thing, Djokovic was 1 ahead. No, Nadal was 1 ahead, and he won Rome, and he won the Cincinnati one, moved to, now he's 1 ahead. Now we've got a clay court season, Nadal's probably going to be ahead. So that's not conclusive. They're about equal. It's changing all the time. But Nadal's still ahead on the Grand Slams. Now the head-to-head, if it's sort of a close battle, well, both Djokovic and Nadal has beat Federer in the head-to-head. So now when you look at Djokovic's head-to-head with Nadal, Djokovic is 2 wins ahead, and they've played over 50 times. So just 2, and they're 2 best-of-3 sets, by the way. And I think best-of-5, it's the better player always wins. It's more conclusive. So Nadal's actually like about 10-6 ahead in best-of-5 sets matches. And then Djokovic has won all these best-of-3 set matches, and he's 2 ahead. So one guy's won more best-of-3, Djokovic. The other guy's. So I think that 4 more wins in the best-of-5 is more important than Djokovic getting 2 more best-of-3 set matches, right? So you've got to consider that. Firstly, 2 matches in over 50, it's not conclusive. Secondly, the guy who's 2 behind has won 4 more in the best-of-5 sets, right? So just think about that. So if you say the best-of-5 sets count for more, but the best-of-3 still count for something, right? If that's your view, then perhaps the 2 that Djokovic has ahead is erased anyway. And then even if you say, well, they're all the same, 2 matches in over 50 is nothing. It's not conclusive. And then we don't even know who's going to win the head-to-head. Like the clay court seasons come in, they could meet 3 or 4 times. Nadal could meet him 3 or 4 more times, and then by June, Nadal could be ahead. Who knows who's going to win it because it's so close. It's going to come down to a few matches. So that's not conclusive either. Masters 1,000, like I said, they're equal. I've already said why I think Nadal will win the Grand Slam race because Djokovic isn't catching him. Federer's not winning, and Federer can't really compete when he's lost his lead and he's 5 years older. So it looks like even though this huge advantage Djokovic and Federer have, 3 of the 4 slams on a surface that suits them, it looks like even still Nadal's so much better than them that he's going to end winning the most Grand Slams when all the odds are against him. Like the tennis establishment, they don't want this. They don't want Nadal to win the most. They don't want him to go down. Before they talked about Federer being the best, now it's Djokovic, just because it's set up that 3 of the 4 Grand Slams will be on grass and a hard court. A clay court player would not have a chance. All the best players ever, it's like a club of players who like grass and hard court and struggled on clay. Maybe Bjorn Borg the exception, right? But they don't want Nadal to do it because it's set up for someone who prefers clay to never have a chance. But somehow, with 1 a year, he's won 13 French Opens and still 7 on a surface that doesn't suit him. He's 2 ahead of a guy who's only a year younger and about to be free at the French Open, and he's tied with a guy 5 years younger and much more opportunity to win. So even if it was tied, I would say with that's a huge advantage to have 3 of the 4 slams on a surface that suit them. Federer, Djokovic should be 5 ahead. They're never going to do that. And even with this advantage, Nadal's probably going to get the most Grand Slams. Year-end #1, they're equal. The head-to-head, it's pretty equal. The Masters 1,000, even on the Masters 1,000, much more of them are on a surface that suits Djokovic. Yet he's only 1 ahead. It's changing all the time. So for me, when I look at all of this, I'm just feel like Nadal's going to win the Grand Slam race most likely. But even if he doesn't by some miracle, like it's ridiculous that it's close. Federer and Djokovic should be 5 ahead. They should be taking advantage. A guy who only gets to play 1 Grand Slam a year on a surface that suits them, he's better on clay than they are on grass and hard court because no one's done what Nadal did at the French Open on any surface, right? And also, like I said, when they go to a surface that doesn't suit them, they win 1 French Open. Nadal gets at least 2 on all the surfaces. So he's clearly better on a surface that doesn't suit him by winning 2 Grand Slams on all 3 surfaces. Whereas Federer and Djokovic can't get 2 Grand Slams on all 3. They're weak on 1. They have 1 French Open, but Nadal's not. He has 2 on all of the 3. Plus Nadal, if he's a clay court, he's got 4 at the US Open, 4 on a hard court at 1 Grand Slam, the US Open, compared to Federer and Djokovic, 1 on clay. So that shows he's way better on a surface that doesn't suit him than they are. And he's also better even on grass than they are on clay. But he's also better on his best surface, clay, than they are on grass or hard court. Any of them. Compare Federer at Wimbledon to him at the French Open, Djokovic at the Australian Open. Djokovic is battling to win the Australian Open now. Nadal dominates, right? So I think it's clear that Nadal, despite this huge advantage of them having 3 of 4 slams on their best surface, him having only 1, it's ridiculous that he's in a chance to win the Grand Slam race, and he's in the pole position to win it anyway. And I think he'll win the Grand Slam race. I also look at other things like Masters 1,000. It's equal between Djokovic and Nadal, head to head. Like I explained why you can't get anything out of that. And I just think that like Federer and Djokovic should be 3, 5, 7 ahead. They should have taken it. It should have never been where a guy who only gets 1 on a surface that suits him and 3 that doesn't is doing as well or better than guys who get 3 of the 4 slams on a surface that suit them and can just win there and don't even need to worry about a surface that doesn't suit him. Whereas the other guy has to be way better than them on a surface that suits him on clay, winning it 13 times, but also has to be better on one that doesn't. Win 4 US Opens on hard court, which doesn't suit him. 2 Wimbledons, way better than their 1 French Open, 4 US Open. So he's better. He's had to be better than them to be equal. He's had to be better on a surface that doesn't suit him, which he's done. The US Open and Wimbledon compared to their 1 French Open, but also better on a surface that does. His French Open results, they can't compete against that anywhere. So that's it for now. So subscribe, bell notification, thumbs up. Have a great day or night wherever you are in the world. And please subscribe. I'm going to do a preview of the Qatar semi-finals coming up on Friday or Saturday, depends on where you are. Bye for now. Subscribe. Thanks. Bye for now. Subscribe. Thanks.